What's up, Dragon Brood? We're going to be taking a look at the blue cards from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Almost forgot the set name. But we're going to look at all the mythics and the rares, and we're going to be looking at these mostly for the first time, so we're going to give kind of honest opinions on what our first assumptions are when we look at them. So let's go have fun looking at these cards. All right, so we have Akal Pakal, first among equals, 3 mana, 1/5, legendary creature, human advisor. At the beginning of each player's end step, if an artifact entered the battlefield under your control this turn, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one into your hand, the other into your graveyard. This is kind of interesting, right? Because it is a 1/5, which means it's going to hold up pretty well against most things. It is, well, it does say at the beginning of each player's end step. So if you have a way to put an artifact in during your opponent's turn or make a token creature, I mean, even if you have a Myrics, possibly being able to make a 1/1, that's an artifact, right? That could matter. And you're just getting an extra card at that point. This one's solid. Now, like, the thing about this card is, I don't know what deck it goes in, but if you find the deck where you want this card, there's probably going to be a lot of value to be had. And you may not even need to play a heavy artifact deck, right? If you're just playing some reasonable number of artifacts. Because there is a world where maybe you're playing one that's gaining some life, maybe you're playing the Celestis, maybe you're playing Myrics, right? So if you have like 4 or 5 different ways to maybe make some artifacts or whatever, then maybe that's enough to make this card viable. Because again, 1/5 is not the smallest creature in the world and can keep a lot of damage off of you. It's kind of a cool card. I don't think it's hugely spectacular, but it's a nice role player in the deck it ends up in. Okay, next up we have Braided Net. It's 3 mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield with 3 net counters on it. Remove a net counter from Braided Net, tap another target non-land permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated for as long as it remains tapped. And you can craft this with some other artifacts, and you pay 2. And then on the backside is pay 4 and tap it, draw a card for each artifact you control. Then put Braided Quipu, I guess that's how, I don't know, I'm going to check our, do we have that? Oh, we have a new guide too. Somebody just posted an updated one today. But anyway, this card, put it into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. This is pretty wild because the front side is already reasonable, right? You just tap down a creature and then that creature can't use activated abilities for as long as this is in play. Now, there's not a ton of things with activated abilities right now, but there are a lot in this set, and that's where it could matter. But you just basically slow down creatures from attacking you or whatever, and then you also turn off their abilities. But then on the backside, assuming you have even 3 or 4 artifacts, like you just activate this, draw that many cards. And this doesn't even have to be used as a sorcery. Now, is this good enough to make a lot of 60-card decks? I don't know, right? Being able to tap down a creature is actually something. And when we're looking at the decks with, what's her name, the Ice Queen, and we're wanting to tap down stuff, this is the type of card that could work really well for that type of deck. Because now it's another thing that you don't even have to pay anything, you just do it. So maybe there's a world where this goes into some other decks. I don't think this is stellar, but it's at least definitely playable. But that's probably all I can say about it at this point. Deeproot Pilgrimage, a colorless and a blue enchantment. Whenever one or more non-token merfolk you control become tapped, create a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token with hexproof. I feel like we had something like this the last time we were in Ixalan. Something that like came out, did a thing, each turn you're making a merfolk. But this is actually pretty easy to trigger, right? Because this isn't even once a turn. So if you have anything else that lets you tap a creature, and there are a few things in this set that could do that, that's going to generate a thing, right? If you're attacking, that's going to generate a token. And it's a token that has hexproof. And if you have any other merfolk that are pumping up your creatures, this is going to get the benefit of that as well. So, kind of cool overall. And it's cheap. That's the other thing. So, like, if you're playing some aggressive blue-green merfolk deck, or I don't know, maybe even mono-blue merfolk, like, you start your attacking, you play this, make an extra token. Attack, make an extra token, right? So even if you're not committing more to the board, you're just getting tokens anyway. Or if you wanted to have some weird token maker combo-y thing, that's also possible. But realistically, that's probably where this is going to go, into some deck that's already doing regular merfolk things, and then you just get some free creatures on top of it. But yeah, very simple card, straightforward, but it could be a very useful card. And I don't think that's wrong. I think sometimes it's hard to produce cards that are both simple and effective in this current day and age of Magic. I think this could be that type of card. Now, again, if you don't have stuff pumping up your merfolk or making them unblockable or whatever, a extra 1/1 every turn isn't going to be that exciting, but it could be if you need to sacrifice something or tap a thing or whatever. Who knows? There's some way I'm sure you could leverage all of that. But yeah, definitely a card to look out for early on, I think. The Enigma Jewel. This is 1 blue, legendary artifact, enters a battlefield tapped. Add 2 colorless, spend this mana only to activate abilities. Craft with 4 or more non-lands with activated abilities for 9. That's a big amount. And then the backside, Locus of Enlightenment, is legendary artifact, has each ability of the cards exiled used to craft it. If you activate each, you may activate each of those abilities once each turn. Whenever you activate one of those abilities that isn't a mana ability, you copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. Yeah, this is a tough one, right? Because it taps for 2 colorless, but you can only use it for activated abilities, which is kind of okay if you're playing a bunch of lands or other stuff that have activated abilities that you need the mana for. So if those type of decks exist, then this is obviously going to be a card for them. The 2 mana can go toward paying for itself, so that's a thing. But I think the trick here is having 4 or more non-land cards with activated abilities. So that means you have to be playing some number of probably artifacts, enchantments, whatever, that have activated abilities to even get to the backside with this. And then you can activate those abilities, but it's not even like you can do them for free. It just says you can activate each of the abilities once each turn. So you still have to pay for the abilities, whatever the activation costs are, but you get to copy them. So this feels like the type of card that's like, it's a lot of work. A lot of work to make work. But if it does its thing, it's probably going to be super devastating and be really good. But I almost wonder if whatever situation you would create to make this good, if you would be able to just find an easier way to win, right? If you're already so far ahead, you had all these things in play that all have activated abilities, then you get rid of all of them to flip the jewel into the Locus of Enlightenment or whatever. And then now you still have all the mana or whatever to be able to activate each of these things and copy all the ability. Like, it just feels like there's got to be an easier way. You know, I feel like one of those people in those infomercials, like, there's just got to be a better way. But like, that's sort of what this feels like. Like, there's just so much work going into this. And I'm sure I'm going to be found completely wrong on this one, but it just feels like a lot of work for not that big of a path. Or maybe it's just not going to be a superstar in Standard. Maybe this is one of those things for Commander or Legacy or whatever. There's some cool, quirky thing you can do with this. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be one of those cards I'm building around right off the bat. The Ever-Flowing Well. More artifacts. 2 colorless and a blue. Legendary artifact. When the Ever-Flowing Well enters a battlefield, mill 2 cards, then draw 2. That's not bad. Descend to 8 at the beginning of your upkeep. If there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, transform Ever-Flowing Well, which isn't that hard to do. And the backside is taps for mana as the Myriad Pools, and whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by Myriad Pools, up to 1 other target permanent you control becomes a copy of that spell until end of turn. That's pretty cool. This one I actually like. It's not going to be that hard to get 8 cards into your graveyard. That's very doable with a bunch of different ways. And then this just lets you copy. It doesn't even let you copy. It turns something else into a copy of whatever you're casting. That's kind of neat. I sort of like this card. Like this is we can do some stuff with this. Like this, man, what was that enchantment? The blue enchantment that like it copied stuff as you played it or whatever, right? That everybody, it's like costs like 5 mana or something that everybody keeps wanting all of us to build decks with, and it just doesn't work out most of the time. Like, this is cool because now you just, like, if you have a thing that comes into play and, I don't know, does something, well, I guess if the ETBs, it wouldn't do any good because the other thing's already in play. So you would want stuff that just maybe you get a bigger creature. Now your 1/1's a bigger creature. Or maybe you have something that gives all your creatures a bonus, and now you have 2 things that do it. So, like, yeah, I think this will take some thought to figure out, like, what things are we trying to copy? But I like the card. I think this actually allows quite a few things to happen. Actually, you know what? You know what? This could be good for the self-mill deck, actually. Because the backside could let you turn any of your little 1/1s or 2/1s that you're using for mana or whatever at different points into Lurgoyfs, into Somnophages. You know, like, you could do a lot of good stuff with this in that type of build. This is a pretty sweet card, actually. All right, we have Kitesell Larsonist. 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/3 flying ward 1. When Kitesell Larsonist enters the battlefield, for each player, choose up to 1 other target artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as Kitesell Larsonist remains on the battlefield, the chosen permanents become treasure artifacts with tap, sacrifice this card, add 1 mana, just like a treasure, and loses all other abilities. This card's probably going to get some play. It is a pirate. We know people are going to be playing pirates. We've seen a lot of artifacts already. I'm sure there's a bunch more we're going to talk about in these set reviews. And this getting to turn some stuff off is just really good. Like, just on its own, being able to turn stuff off is pretty powerful. And in Commander as well, you get to do this for each player, which is also very cool. And it's not even, and it's, each other player, you choose target artifact or creature. Man, being able to turn off creatures too is really strong. Like, this card has to see some amount of play. I'm going to be really surprised if this card doesn't get played, because this is a pretty good, and it's a 2/3 flyer that's hard to kill on its own. So yeah, this is a pretty cool card. I like it. All right, we have Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel. Colorless and a blue for 2/1 flash flyer. It's a legendary creature, Siren Pirate. Whenever Malcolm enters or deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it. Draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 4 or more chorus counters on Malcolm, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost. This is just cool. If you're playing a pirate deck, I mean, this is kind of straightforward. You get a 2/1 flyer with flash, which is always cool. I mean, on rate, it's great. And then when it connects, if you have 4 counters on it, you just get to play stuff for free. Not a lot to really say about this card. I don't know if you play a lot of them. Like, if you're playing pirates, you maybe put 2 of in the deck since it's legendary. Maybe even 3. But yeah, just a card your opponent has to deal with after a point because they don't want to just let it connect multiple times and then be worried about you getting free stuff every turn. So yeah, cool card. This was actually, I feel like this is the most straightforward card we've had so far to talk about. Like, you play the creature, it does a thing, you get the counters, you get free things. Awesome, right? Like, nice and simple. Now, I'm going to butcher this name here. What is it? Pactic is probably how it's pronounced with a hard Q. Deepest Epic. So you've got 2 colorless, blue for 4/3 legendary creature god with flying. Whenever you cast an instant spell from your hand, it gains rebound. Rebound is whenever you exile this card as it resolves. At the beginning of its upkeep, you can cast it again without paying its mana cost. When this card dies, return to the battlefield tapped, transformed under its owner's control, which is Temple of Cyclical Time. Tap it, make a blue and remove a time counter from the temple. Pay 3 and tap it. Transform it to the backside only if it has no time counters on it. Oh, we're adding time counters from the front. Did I miss that part? Oh, with 3 time counters on it. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. So this is just use it to make blue and remove counters, and then it eventually flips to the backside. Probably the easiest of them to flip, I would imagine, because this is just like use it as you would use it, and then it eventually goes to its front side. But you do have to flip it as a sorcery, not as an instant. So that is the downside to several of these things that transform. A lot of them seem to say transform as a sorcery, whether that's forwards or backwards. That does add a level of complication because you have to dedicate your mana or your action on your turn, as opposed to waiting to see what plays out or if your opponent sweeps your board or whatever else. Because here now you're like, you could flip it back to the front, but now you're making it susceptible to, say, like a Sunfall or something with additional mana down. So, the card itself seems pretty sweet, though. The fact that all your stuff gets rebound is actually really damn cool, especially if you're playing this in some type of blue-green aggro-y type deck where you're playing like Giant Growth and whatever. I mean, there's probably other cards you're playing, but just that as an example is just like, okay, the next turn, all of these things that I played get to trigger again, and that could end up being a lot of damage with just free spells. So yeah, I'm into it. This is actually pretty cool. Also, you could bounce something, right? From your hand. Yeah, so you bounce something on your opponent's turn, then on your turn you get to bounce a thing again. That's actually pretty cool too. So lots of applications for the ability here. This is actually pretty cool. I'm kind of into this. This is neat. Subterranean Schooner. That's or maybe that's Schooner. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I've never seen that. It's obviously a type of ship. Colorless and a blue for a 3/4. Whenever it attacks, target creature that crewed it explores, and it crews for 1. That's actually a pretty reasonable card, honestly. Like, if you're playing something with Explore, this is fine. If you just want a reasonable body that might sit around after a sweeper, this is fine. It crews for 1, so in pretty much any token you make can crew it. It's a 3/4, which is nice. Even if you play it as a blocker early on, right? Like, you play it, it sits there with another creature, you turn this into a 3/4, you block with it, that's fine. Yeah, and it has some pretty epic looking art, honestly, like an old pirate ship that's got like a big wave coming over it. Like, I like this card. I don't know how good it's going to be, or if you even want it in particularly the Explore deck. Maybe there's some other type of deck that's just playing vehicles or tokens or whatever that wants this, and just exploring as a bonus. But it's a pretty fair costed card. Like, we don't really play a lot of vehicles these days, but this is one that's actually well costed for the size of the creature you turn it into. It has a very low crew cost, obviously of just 1, and it has an upside additional ability that could be growing a creature, filtering your draws, whatever. So yeah, this is a neat card. I don't know how often we're going to play it, but it's pretty neat. I'm also being told in chat this is pronounced Schooner. So there you go. Credit where it's due. So it's pronounced Schooner. So there you go. We're learning a lot of things on this stream. So this is actually pretty sweet. Tashana's Tidebinder. 3 mana for a 3/2 Merfolk Wizard with Flash. So far, so good. When it enters the battlefield, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If any ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as this card is on the battlefield. Wow. Yeah, this card's good. Like, it's a 3 mana 3/2 with Flash. So already solid, right? And then you can just turn off any activated or triggered ability. So pretty much any ability that's in play, you could turn it off. And then they don't happen for as long as this card is in play. This means, like, let's say you're going to attack, your opponent flashes in a Wandering Emperor, right? And they're going to exile a creature. And you're like, nah, I'd rather not. Let's just make sure this doesn't work. And now your Wandering Emperor does nothing until you get rid of this Tidebinder. Like, this is a really good card. Especially with all these artifacts that are flipping and doing all this stuff. Like, you just turn those off if you want to. Like, this is really cool. It doesn't affect lands, which is nice. But yeah, artifact creatures or planeswalkers. This is cool. This is a good card. I don't even know if I'm going to be playing a lot of Merfolk, but this card, like, I would argue that this card is good enough that some non-Merfolk decks are probably going to play this card. Even if it's just as a sideboard, right? If you're playing against a deck that has 2 or 3 good cards with activated abilities that are going to annoy you, like, great. You can go ahead and play this card as a sideboard option, and then now you can turn off a bunch of things your opponent's playing. Like, this is a good card. Yeah, this is really good. Like, I can think of a lot of situations where this card's spectacular. Big Bone says, rip Shieldred. And it works on Shieldred as well, right? When Shieldred goes to trigger to have you lose life, play this, turn off Shieldred. Now Shieldred, you don't have to worry about that effect, any effects on it, right? Yeah, it loses all abilities. So it's just, actually, it even loses Death Touch. It said loses all ability. So now shields are just a 4/5, just sitting there. So this is actually pretty sweet. I'm about this card. This is pretty cool. I'm about it. Yeah, big fan. Big fan. Question is just a thought. What would happen if you hit something that was in the graveyard or hand? Well, it says lose all abilities for as long as this card is on the battlefield. I think it would still turn it off. If it was in hand, it wouldn't, because that wouldn't matter, I don't think. But in the graveyard, you should still be able to turn it off. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that would be correct. That's going to do it for this video, but if you want to check out more cards from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, check out one of these next videos. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll catch you next time.